Greetings, friends. Today I want to take you back to a quiet spring night in 1986, to a place that was never meant to become a symbol of disaster. A place where people went to work believing they were building the future, unaware that before dawn they would change the course. This is the story of Chernobyl. Not just the explosion, but the human decisions, the silence, and the cost that followed, moment by moment. In the northern part of Ukraine, near the border of Belarus, stood the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. It was one of the largest and most powerful nuclear facilities in the Soviet Union, a monument to human progress, a promise of limitless energy. Just 3 kilometers away was the city of Pripyat, a modern city built specifically for the plant's workers and their families. Wide streets, schools, hospitals, parks filled with children. Nearly 50,000 people lived there. Young couples, engineers, teachers, infants sleeping peacefully in their cribs. On April 25, 1986, everything appeared normal. Inside reactor number 4, engineers prepared for a routine safety test. The goal was simple: to see whether the reactor's turbines could produce enough electricity during a power outage, long enough to activate backup generators. It was a test that had been delayed multiple times before, a test that had already raised concerns. But pressure existed. Schedules mattered. Mistakes were rarely admitted. As evening approached, a sudden request from the power grid forced the reactor to keep running longer than planned. This disrupted the test sequence. Shift changes occurred. Night staff, less experienced, took over. The reactor was pushed into an unstable state. Power levels dropped dangerously low. Control rods were withdrawn too far. Safety systems were disabled intentionally to prevent interruptions. The reactor was no longer under control. At 1:23 a.m., the test began. Within seconds, alarms sounded. Power surged unexpectedly. Operators attempted an emergency shutdown. They pressed the AZ5 button, designed to stop everything instantly. Instead, it made things worse. A design flaw caused a massive spike in power. In less than a second, the reactor core exploded. Then came a second explosion, even more violent. The 2,000-ton steel lid of the reactor was blown into the air. Concrete shattered. Fire erupted. Reactor 4 was open to the sky. Radioactive material blasted into the atmosphere, higher than any nuclear weapon ever detonated. But inside the control room, confusion reigned. Many operators refused to believe the reactor had exploded. They insisted it was impossible. Radiation meters maxed out, unable to measure higher levels. Some devices simply stopped working. They assumed readings were false. Outside, pieces of glowing graphite littered the ground, fragments of the reactor core itself. Firefighters were called. They arrived without protective gear, without knowledge of radiation, without warning. They did what firefighters always do. They climbed onto the burning roof. They grabbed hoses. They stepped directly onto radioactive debris. Within minutes, their skin reddened. Metallic tastes filled their mouths. Some began vomiting. They didn't know they were receiving fatal doses. By dawn, the fires were mostly extinguished. But the real disaster had only begun. In Pripyat, residents woke up to a strange sight. A pillar of smoke rising into the sky. A blue glow above the plant, caused by ionized air. Children played outside. Couples walked to work. Weddings continued as planned. No announcement was made. Radiation spread silently through the city. People stood on bridges to watch the fire, later known as the Bridge of Death. None of those spectators would survive long term. Inside hospitals, firefighters and workers collapsed. Doctors didn't understand what they were seeing. Skin peeled away, internal organs failed, bodies broke down from the inside. Still, officials delayed evacuation. The Soviet system demanded control, not panic. Finally, 36 hours after the explosion, buses arrived. Residents were told they would leave for 3 days. Take only essential items, they were told. Pets will be fine. They never returned. Pripyat became a ghost city in a single afternoon. Behind the scenes, panic spread through the government. Radiation was detected in Sweden, over 1,000 kilometers away. Only then did the world realize something was wrong. The Soviet Union could no longer hide it. Helicopters were sent to drop sand, lead, and boron into the open reactor, trying to smother the fire and absorb radiation. Pilots flew directly above the exposed core. Many would later die from radiation sickness. Miners were brought in to dig a tunnel beneath the reactor, working in unbearable heat, often naked, knowing they were sacrificing their health. Hundreds of thousands of liquidators were mobilized, soldiers, engineers, volunteers. Their task to clean the impossible. Robots failed due to radiation damage, so humans were sent instead. Men ran onto the reactor roof for 90 seconds at a time, shoveling radioactive debris back into the core. 90 seconds. That was all it took to permanently damage their bodies. Many were never officially counted. Entire villages were erased from maps. Forests turned red and died. Animals mutated. Land became inhabitable. A concrete sarcophagus was built around the reactor, rushed, imperfect, cracking over time. Years passed. Cancer rates rose. Birth defects appeared. Psychological trauma spread among survivors. Official death counts remained low, but the true number will never be known. Chernobyl became a forbidden zone, a scar on the earth. Yet life returned in strange ways. Nature reclaimed the land. Trees grew through buildings. Wild animals flourished without humans. Wolves, deer, birds. Radiation remained, unseen, unchanged. Decades later, a new steel containment structure was built to seal the reactor for another century. But the damage was already done. Chernobyl wasn't just a technological failure. It was a failure of communication, of arrogance, of denial. It showed what happens when systems are valued more than people, when warnings are ignored, when silence is enforced. The explosion lasted seconds. The consequences will last thousands of years. Today, visitors walk through abandoned classrooms, Ferris wheels that never carried passengers, apartments where calendars still hang on April 1986. Time stopped there. Chernobyl stands as a reminder that the greatest dangers are not always loud. Sometimes they are invisible, silent, and allowed to grow. A city lost, lives altered, a future rewritten. And beneath layers of steel and concrete, the reactor still sleeps, waiting.